First off, you should know that I do plan on seeing Pitch Perfect 2, but I was really busy this weekend with work and some other stuff, but I do plan on seeing it this week, and I will have my review of that up ASAP. However, I was able to see Mad Max Fury Road, so let's talk about that. Mad Max Fury Road is the fourth Mad Max movie directed by George Miller. It's been 30 years since the last Mad Max movie, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, came out. Now, right off the bat, you should know that I had never seen any of the original Mad Max movies. So before I saw this, I went and watched them, and honestly, I liked them enough that I went and bought them on Blu-ray. The first I actually enjoyed, and I thought it was a great revenge type story. The second one, I'll be honest, not particularly my favorite, but I did enjoy it, and the action was great, and it took Mad Max to a whole other level. And Beyond Thunderdome, I actually enjoyed it. A lot of people say it's the weakest of the three, but I thought it was an enjoyable, decent film. And speaking of Beyond Thunderdome, my father actually has a vinyl copy of the song Tina Turner made for that movie. Every time I go through my dad's old records, I always see that, and I'm like, maybe I should watch it, but I never got around to it. And since Fury Road is about to come out, I was like, maybe I'll watch it now. Now, Fury Road stars Tom Hardy, who plays Mad Max. He gets captured by these crazies led by Immortal Joe. They use him to catch Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron. She has this group of women she helps escape from Immortal Joe, and Mad Max is able to escape, and he runs into Furiosa and ultimately helps them get to one of the few places that still remains green. And ultimately, this movie is a long car chase where they get from point A to point B. Now, here are the positives. Oh my god, this movie was so awesome. And that credit goes to George Miller, who made the original three Mad Max movies. The best way I can describe this movie is this is like the old Mad Max movies, but with a bigger budget. It's like George Miller called out all the action directors of today and said, just stop, this is how you make an action movie. All the action in this movie was all practical. Now granted, there were some visual effects where it was necessary. Like the scene where they're in that tornado storm, and I was on the edge of my seat during that scene. And I felt like the effects in that scene were utilized beautifully. But during all the car chase scenes in this movie, you will be surprised how much of all that was practical. Now, I just love the idea in this movie that we live in this post-apocalyptic world and people are not really sane anymore. Hell, Max, he's not even a little sane anymore. And ultimately, people will do what they gotta do to survive. Now, for the cast in this movie, the real MVP of this film was Furiosa, who's played by Charlize Theron. She is a real badass in this movie, and even though this is a movie with not much deep meaning, and with not much character development within the film, I feel like they gave enough development to her character and you understand where she's coming from. Nicholas Hoult in this movie plays Nux, and he is one of the crazies that is pretty much a fanboy to Immortal Joe. And he is like a fanboy. He will do anything to meet and be with him. But then something happens where he fails him and it brings some humanity to him. And he helps Max and the others. I will go as far as saying this is probably my favorite film with Nicholas Hoult. And now for the big question, how was Tom Hardy as Mad Max? Now, I will say Tom Hardy, he was functional in the movie. I'm not saying he was bad, he was good in the movie. He's no Mel Gibson. But for what this movie called for, I'd say Tom Hardy did his job in the movie. But here's where my negatives come in. There was not enough Mad Max in this movie. Most of this movie was focused around Furiosa and some of the other characters. And Mad Max just kind of got sidelined in this movie. Now granted, luckily, Charlize Theron and Nicholas Hoult, they were good enough characters within this movie that you cared about them. But with this movie being called Mad Max Fury Road, you would expect to see more Mad Max. Hell, this movie should have just been called Furiosa, a movie featuring Mad Max. Some of my other negatives are the action. Now, I love the action, but there were times where the action was a bit too much that the movie didn't give you a chance to digest all that and give you a breather. Now, there was some downtime within the movie, but that wasn't until the third act. And the only other negative I can think of is that this movie doesn't really know what it wants to be. I mean, supposedly, people say that this movie takes place between The Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome. And people say you don't need to watch the other movies to go into this one. But there were some times in the movie that it kind of goes back to the other movies, but they don't really elaborate on it. And with all that, you can't tell whether or not this movie was supposed to either be a spin-off or a mid-sequel or a reboot. And that's what the film felt like at times. At least to me, of course. That's just me personally, but I know this movie will struck people different ways and they know what it is, but I'm just saying, like, those are some personal negatives I have with the movie. Other than that, in the end, I absolutely enjoyed this movie. It was a great fun film. The characters were great. The action was great. I am advocating that you get off your ass and go see it. If you're a child of the 80s and you grew up with these movies, you will love it. If you're an action junkie, and you will love this movie. Please, people, do not make this year's Edge of Tomorrow. It is worth every penny. And if you go into this movie critiquing the shit out of it, honestly, you're doing yourself a disservice when watching this movie and enjoying it for what it is. I will give Mad Max Fury Road an A for full price. That's it for the day. You like what you see, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to my other channel. The links are in the description below. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. Peace.